Now, guys, so just so everybody knows, if you object to being recorded, you need to not stick around. So, oh my
Or
gosh.
if I'm upside down, that's the only time I object.
Yeah, the upside down part that was a special trick.
Yeah, cool.
I guess that's what when you click the one that says rotate 90 degrees, I didn't know that they were meant rotate 90 degrees that way. rather simple move, but oh my gosh, what not quite sure what I did. Now remember, you the room, most of you are muted, and you can stay on mute, or when you want to, and then when you want to speak, press your space bar and hold it down while you speak. Yeah, or you can just take your screen off, your computer off mute, and be silent when the meeting's going on. It's all up to you. See, we let you make your own choices most of the time. So, hey there, Al.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fine here too, thanks.
Excellent. And Mr. Kaplan and Mr. Dawson and Gary and Ron,
Hi.
Bob, Steve. Let's see, Pete. Hi, Sally. Good to see you. Tyler. Hello there. Susan Turner. Hello. Hi, Martha. I guess we just kind of went around the circle there, and we'll wait a couple more minutes before we get underway.
So I think you need to do something to share the ability to record.
Oh, well, so I don't know how to share the ability, but we're recording right now. And what I'm going to do is upload this to our new YouTube channel. That way I don't have to try to push a file out to everybody who asks for a copy of this 100+ meg file. It's pretty gigantic. These recordings, these MP4 recordings get pretty big. So you would just go to YouTube, and I'll send the link out to it so that you can just click in on the link and watch the recording afterwards at your own pace. But the alternative is rather ugly. If any of you have ever tried to push a gigantic file out over the internet, yes, there's tools like Dropbox and Google Drive and all of those kind of things. Usually there's some limitation. And since we have a YouTube channel as of Saturday, you get to use YouTube. So
What's the name of the channel, Walt?
it's, ooh, I heard some music. It's the Photo Forum Gallery. And right now you'll see there won't be anything in it. If you go to Photo Forum Gallery on YouTube, there won't be anything in. But there will be after tonight.
Okay.
And I'll send the link out to everybody here who's attending. And I got my $50,000 baseball cap on. It says Chapman University, where I did not go, but one of my children did.
And he gave you a cap.
And I got a cap.
Yeah.
What more could I ask for as a cap, huh? Jeez. Well, let's see. We've got kind of a fun program tonight. I mean, Jeff is actually in tomorrow. He moves so quickly. It's Tuesday where he is at, which means that, you know, as you age, time gets to be kind of, everything seems to speed up as you get older. And so Jeff has managed to leap into the future, kind of like that TV character did back in the, who was that leaped forward? What was the name of that show? On American TV, I can't remember.
Oh.
But they used to leap forward and fix problems that were going to happen if they didn't fix the problem in the future. And I think Jeff's got a few prescriptions for fixing our problems starting tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will this help?
Say again?
Well,
Will this help?
Is it a Foster's? It's a Breakers.
Solve problems.
since it's tomorrow down under, I want the winning lottery numbers.
Yeah. Jeff,
Yes.
Oh, that's a great
Okay.
idea.
just start with that. Give us the winning lottery numbers. That's great. So we're just gonna wait another minute or two, guys, and then we'll put things in motion here. I know we've got a few more people than what we have on the call at this point, but we are conflicting with the Democrats convention in Wisconsin or on Zoom tonight. So what can you say, right?
Yeah. It's,
I'm-
whether or not we see it probably won't change the way we vote.
Not at this point, no.
No, it would take an awful, I mean, Biden would have to do something totally horrendous. I can't even imagine what he could do that would change our vote.
Yeah, I know. Well, don't say that kind of stuff, would you? That's kind of scary.
No, but like we find out he's the devil and we go, yeah, I can live with that.
Yeah, actually, we already know who the devil is. So. But it may be the brother of.
Yeah, he's a serial killer. Yeah, I can go with that.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
I'm sure he had a reason.
That's a good thing to say. I like that.
So Susan, I saw a political sign out front of the house 2 or 3 days ago that said any adult person for 2020.
Any adult, yeah, any adult.
Any adult.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just checking the clock here, and I don't. Oh, you know something? Speak of the devil, I'm going to admit 12 more people. They just lined up, so here they come.
Oh,
And then
cool.
We'll get started. This has been much anticipated for many reasons. First of all, we'll get into Jeff's presentation in just a little bit, but hello to everybody who just joined us. But for other reasons, this is the first international broadcast of the Portland Photographers Forum network. So here we are on quite an auspicious occasion. We're going international. We're leaping across the date line. All kinds of good things are happening.
God, you are having so much fun
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah, we are. We're really having fun. We'll talk about a couple things that have been fun this last week. Just for everybody who got on board just a minute ago, I wanted to welcome all of you. I see Mr. Kirby's there, and Day, and Peter Bedrick, and Doug Rundle, who's coming in on Kate Rundle's computer, Pat Rose, and Giannis. Hi, Jane. And let's see, Andrew, good to see you. Let's see, I said hello to Mr. Brockway and Mr. Dawson. So I think I'll just keep my eye on the waiting room. We have a nice full house tonight, and I want to welcome all of you to our August monthly meeting. I'm going to be referring to some notes here in a few minutes. So if I look away from the screen, from the camera, don't mind me. I am paying attention. Now, occasionally, it may take a little more time for me to pay attention to what I'm supposed to do. But let me review. When you want to speak, and if you are muted, you just press the space bar and you hold it down as you speak. Or you may unmute your microphone on your computer and just leave it unmuted. But then you have to watch out for cats and dogs and fire trucks that go by your house. Anyway, since we're underway, I want to, as I said, welcome everybody to this fun new meeting. And I think we've got a couple of people who, we have at least one person, and I'm going to put him on I'm gonna put him on the spot. We've got a person who's visited a couple of times that I've invited to attend. Oh, we've got two people that that we have someone live from upstate New York in the lower corner. Hello, Ken.
Oh, well,
And Ken is a buddy of mine that we did a Adirondacks workshop last September, which was just amazing. And we and our spouses have traveled Italy a couple times together. So he's an avid photographer. Hello, Ken. You want to say anything?
it's a pleasure to be here. It's lovely weather, warm. We're up in the Adirondacks. For those of you who may not know New York State well, we occupy 1/5 of New York State. So Google us, and here we are. And it's nice to be here. And thank you very much for inviting me, Walt.
Well, I'm sure you're going to enjoy this, and I'm glad you can make it.
Thank
And
you.
at the opposite end, on the other diagonal, is an old buddy of mine, Phil Fleury. And Phil, good to see you once again. And Phil and I used to do dangerous things together for about 12 years. So
Yeah, still do sometimes.
when we're let out of the house. So,
Yeah, when we're let out of the house.
yeah, when our wives let us leave the house. So
I'm just glad we're not working the street anymore.
exactly. I think of all those poor. The inside story is Phil and I were both Portland Police Reserve officers for about 12 years, and we had a lot of fun working together, and you know, a couple of old guys, so we had all the wisdom of age, and we just enjoyed people liking us, you know, rather than what is being experienced out in Portland right now. So it's good to see you too, Phil. And Phil actually has a history from New York as well. I believe your father had a photography portrait photography practice.
My father worked for Downstate Medical Center. He did a lot of medical photography years and years ago when that wasn't too common. He did some fine art stuff too on his own time, but he was right in there with the surgeons before the internet, taking pictures of procedures.
Great.
Try not to throw up, and you know, all the good things that were there. So he actually taught me from a young age how to mostly film, of course, at that time, develop film, but still got some film cameras that we use.
Great.
So, yeah.
Well, it's good to see you. Hello, Mr. Bruce. Welcome, Bruce Leonard. He's in the Mission Control Center. I can see. That's got to be a real backdrop, knowing all the technology you use to take pictures of the stars. So you got to press your space bar if you want to speak. So
Here we go.
there, now we can
Yeah.
hear you.
Coming to you live from Mission Control.
Mission Control. All right. Yeah. Well, so what we're going to do tonight is we have Jeff Moorfoot from Lionville, Australia, which is not too far from, well, probably quite a ways from Melbourne. I'll let him tell you all about that. Jeff I've just enjoyed, every time I've talked to Jeff, I have enjoyed talking to him, and he's got quite an extensive and interesting photography world he's lived in, as well as many other things that he's lived in. So we're going to hear from Jeff in just a little while. A couple other things I wanted to bring up is we've got the images from the August monthly photo challenge, which was my photo walk. Well, it was your photo walk. The title was my photo walk. And we put together a little presentation of that, which we'll push out. So you can look at it again if you want. So that was kind of fun putting together. I learned something new. And can I just see a show of hands? Does anybody use Adobe Spark? Any of the apps inside it? Okay, Giannis uses Spark. I'm just looking for hands. I would probably record a Spark session because I'm such a fiend about it now. It's really cool. And I've created this slideshow in Spark. And I've also created a what they call page, which is like a little website. You can throw together, if you had 10 photos of your holiday and you wanted just to put them up so that your friends and family could look at it, or maybe you did something for a client, you can create a quick little website and send them a private link. It's free. If you're not an Adobe customer, you can still get Spark for free and use it for free. And so it's actually pretty cool. It's the only thing you get that I found so far that's it carries the Adobe logo, which you'll see on the free version, and you can delete the logo if you have an Adobe account where you're using like the photography plan or one of those. So the other thing I wanted to mention too is for those of you that weren't in attendance, weren't able to attend the fine art printing workshop we had on Saturday. It went very well. A lot of fun. Mark Fitzgerald's, as we all know, is a wonderful instructor, and took us through Lightroom printing from A to Z. I said last Saturday, I meant last week. And this past Saturday, we had a session conducted by Susan Turner and Doug Rundle, where Doug took us through the setup in Lightroom, starting from the beginning from A and working through to Z on making a print in Lightroom and adjusting the margins and the sharpening and exposure and all these kinds of things, and answered questions. So I think the general consensus was these are going well, they're fun workshops, and we are looking at perhaps doing another one, which would be on Lightroom's catalog, which is really an asset manager. It's an image manager. So those of you who use Lightroom probably already know how extensive it is. It's got a few new twists. It's got a few new add-ons that came out in the latest releases. And so we've been thinking about having Mark come back and do a session on that. So that's what you saw, the survey I sent out a couple days ago to see what kind of gauge the interest. So that's been good. Susan or Doug, did you want to add anything to the workshop discussion? Anything else?
Just that we're planning on doing one more. I think that's the 24th.
Yeah, that's
one more, a second follow-up.
Second follow-up session. Now that puts us in kind of a tough spot because these follow-up sessions are really for attendees who paid for the class.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if someone really wants to sit in on the session, send an email to me. You know how to reach me, and I'll add your name to the list. So,
couldn't we charge them $1.99 or something?
We probably should. Go to the PayPal account and send us $2, and we'll let you in. Yeah. Anyway, so. So that's really what I wanted to mention. We'll have the newsletter coming out fairly soon here in the next couple of days, the irregular newsletter, and so there'll be more announcements in there. Giannis, did you want to mention anything about Blue Sky, the Blue Sky Gallery? I know it's reopening. Remember, press your space bar when you talk.
Yes, I haven't. My plan is probably tomorrow or Wednesday is to send out to the people that have signed up for the Blue Sky and ask them if, given the parameters, if they're still interested, and then kind of organize a schedule around that. And that's all. I've kind of been a little bit tied up with other projects, so tomorrow or Wednesday, I'll get that out.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to see they're going to reopen, of course, with lots of limitations. Now, Oregon Society of Artists, do we have anybody on this meeting that is presenting? Is going to exhibit at the OSA in October? Hold your hand up if you are. Oh, good. Jim Dawson says he'll be there.
How do you know if they're participating or not? I mean, we don't even know the theme.
Well, Day, you'd have to actually read your emails that I send you. You got to click on the link in the most recent email, and that'll take you to the prospectus. Oh, you're teasing me. Okay. But yeah, there's a prospectus out. And the reason I bring it up, it's about Oregon during adverse times is basically the theme. It turns out that Oregon Public Broadcasting caught wind of this. And so they're going to follow around with their cameras for their show, for their TV show. They're going to follow people around. I don't know if it would be you or whoever, but you know, if you are going to exhibit, they may follow you around, and they may be at the opening night and so forth. Anyway, so that's something to consider. Great for publicity for those of you that want more publicity about your photography. The deadline has been extended out. That'll be in the newsletter this week. It's been extended like a couple of weeks, I think, to the middle of September, early to mid-September. Thanks for responding to all the surveys too that we put out. I know sometimes it can be tiring to get surveys all the time, but you know, we want to be responsive to the membership, and the only way to do that is to ask questions. So we try to keep them short, and we try to keep them pertinent, and so you may see in the future, you will see more surveys. Ron did a real yeoman's job of the long-term survey for PPF, and you're helping us on the board to make decisions about what we're going to do in the future for PPF. So thank you for doing that. And let's see, the last real announcement that I wanted to bring up is, as we get towards September here, I want you to start thinking about considering being on the board for 2021 and 2022. We're going to have a few vacancies, and as you can tell, these are challenging times, but they're also really fun times, and they've been a great learning experience for all of us on the board because we've had to adapt. We haven't done things this way before. And so in some respects, especially the social aspects of things, of course, I think we're all disappointed that we can't sit together and then go have a beer over at the Lucky Lab. In other ways, we've learned, because of this adversity, we've learned new ways to communicate and to conduct our meetings and do workshops and bring people in like Jeff from around the world. So this is an exciting time. And I think, as generally speaking, I think everyone on the board has is taking a fresh look at what we do and really considering the possibilities of other things that we can do. I think you're going to see all kinds of new things come out of this. Some of them be, you know, they'll last for a month or two and they won't play out well. Other things will be things we'll wholeheartedly embrace and change the way, even after we reopen physically to our meetings, they'll change the way we continue to conduct the business of PPF for people getting together and doing workshops and doing training and this kind of thing. I'll ask is there anything that the board, other board members on the call want to mention about that? I mean, your own experience about doing things this way? That's a big negative. Okay, no, you don't have to say anything. I know some people are bashful. Anyway, so remember, press the space bar if you want to say something. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and I've got something in my chat window here. Oh, from Ross Kaplan to everyone. He said, the sign said any functioning adult 2020. I got one of those on my street too, Ross. So I have something I want to share with y'all, and it is the images from our monthly photo challenge. So if you'll hang on here, I think you might get a kick out of this. I'm going to share my screen. Bada bing, bada boom. Let's see. I got to find what I'm going to share too. So hold on a second. You see, I'm always learning. I can't do that. Got to get you. Yeah, stop right there. And then I can do this, and then I can drag this window back. I know you're all laughing, but just wait. You'll get a chance to run the controls someday too. Here we go. Somebody tell me you can see that.
Yep.
We can say it.
We
All
can
right.
see it. Looks good. Is this France playing in the background?
Yes. Give yourselves a hand.
A hand to you, Walt. You're getting much better at those presentations.
Thank you. That was Adobe Spark, by the way, guys, and it was free. And I did that in about 20 minutes. It took me longer to put the photos together behind each person's name than it did to learn how to use it. So I really encourage you to play with it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And does it come with a selection of tunes?
It does, and you can add your own music if you want to.
Okay.
And you can download a copy of what you make, which is a file you can post to your own website. Or what's really cool is that was running on Adobe's server at no cost. Anything I have up there, it doesn't matter how much stuff I stick up there, it's all a freebie. You don't have to be an Adobe paying customer, and the file storage, I haven't found what the limit is. So I mean, it's a lot of cool stuff you can do there. Some of you I know don't feel real gooey about Adobe, but that was just one of those neat things that I enjoyed. So we're filling up. I hope you enjoyed that, and you'll get your September assignment very shortly, as soon as I get the next irregular newsletter out. So, but I loved seeing your images, and it was a lot of fun to play with them and see everything that was sent in. So let's keep having fun with that. I truly enjoyed it, and I think you did too.
Hey, Walt, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Are there any guidelines on how many images we can send in? I noticed some people had one, some people had maybe 5 or 6, or what?
Well, Jim Hodell and Mike O'Brien kind of hit the tops of the charts with about 10. Now, I also had other things going on in my life during this time period. You know, it wasn't crazy. I mean, there's probably about 50 images, maybe a little bit under that. So I'm fine with that. It hasn't gotten out of hand. If I had to, I am going to ask people to change the way they name the images, the title of the images, and it'll be like Bowser 1 rather than 1 Bowser, because what happens, I have to go search 1 and then 2, and I have to look through and go back and find everyone that belonged to Phil Bowser. But if you just use your last name first and then 1, 2, 3, they're all together. I can find them all at one time to get them in the right order. So anyway, this is not my show. This is Jeff Moorfoot's show. And I'm going to give you a little intro on Jeff, and I'm going to release the screen so that he can share his work. I would like to, I don't have to read, if you got the last newsletter, Carol and Susan know Jeff from the past. But Jeff, I got to read off my iPad. This is the newsletter. You can't see it anyway, because Jeff sent me his introduction. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to read it here without sounding like I'm really reading from a script. Jeff he's live from tomorrow. Let's face it, it is tomorrow in a land down under. The title of his introduction to Portland Photographers Forum is 50 Shades of Grayscale. Quite appropriate. It could have been, 12 zones or something along those lines. Australian Jeff Moorfoot went from being a high school dropout to a holder of the Medal of Order of Australia. That's if you read up on that, it's a highly prestigious honor. The lack of an overabundance of talent has never held him back. On a journey as diverse and unconventional as one can imagine, his occupational history includes stints as a gravedigger, oil rig roughneck, university lecturer, festival director, builder, photographer, magazine editor, market gardener, and much more. Now, I don't know what a market gardener is. I do know what the Beaverton Farmers Market is. So maybe we'll find out what a market gardener is. Now, no surprise, his strong sense of individuality, resourcefulness, and humor, reinforced with a healthy dose of bluff and illusion, has accompanied his path through 7 decades of adventure. Snippets from this journey will be revealed. He's, get this, he's the founder of the Free Radicals. He's the co-organizer of the homeless gallery, Galleria Desdemona in Australia.
Bejdamna.
Bejdamna. Okay. He's the former vice president of the Victorian division of the AIPP and founder and former festival director of the Ballarat International Photo Biennial, formerly the Daysford Photo Biennial. Jeff is also the editor of the online magazine Beta, Developments in Photography. He's a progressive traditionalist dedicated to making pictures about things instead of things. He likes to take an opposing point of view on most matters. In other words, he's a stereotypical Australian like all Americans imagine to be. He probably bends his empty Foster Lager cans on his forehead. He lives in Lionville in the central Victorian Highlands of Australia in a house that he designed and built for himself. And it's such a hoot to talk to him. I think this is going to be one of those memorable presentations and times that we're going to talk about a lot in the future. So Jeff, welcome to Portland, Oregon, and welcome to Portland Photographers Forum. And the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Walt. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
It was in, okay, so I don't need to tinker with volume. Good morning, America. Well, good afternoon. So here in Lionville, it's just after lunchtime. It's grey and overcast outside. Obviously, we're in the middle of winter. It's probably about 8 or 9 degrees centigrade, whatever that is in Fahrenheit. So it's cold, hence I'm sort of rugged up. And probably like the rest of the planet, we're on lockdown, coronavirus. Not totally locked down in Lionville because we're out in the country, out in the regions, but in Melbourne, everybody's locked down. Can't leave home for basically anything. But anyhow, I said I'm a bit of a hermit, so it hasn't made a whole great deal of difference to my lifestyle. So Portland, I was in Portland last year, 2019, I think, for Photo Lucida. Did portfolio reviews there and enjoyed my stay very much. So it's nice to be back, even though it's only virtually this time and not physically. How much time have I got, Walt?
You know, you've got an hour and 20 minutes.
An hour and 20 minutes. Okay. I've got quite a bit of stuff, so we'll just go on and see how we go. Okay. So we're on screen sharing. Boom. Got it.
Looking good.
Hang on, let me go. Hey. Okay. So I've got to say, I'm not particularly talented at anything, although I have a very wide range of interests and not particularly well-developed skill sets. And technology is one of those. So it's a bit of a love-hate relationship. I tend to work on my knowledge base is based on a needs to know. So if I need to know how to do something, that's as much as I need to know. But I guess I do have I have an innate curiosity, and I don't have a fear of failure. So, and I think that is probably one of my strengths, or some might say that's a weakness. But not having a fear of failure doesn't stop me from trying anything. So anyhow. So I'm gonna take you on a bit of a journey. And see how far we get. So I'm going to touch a bit on my background, the festival that I started, the magazine, and quite a bit of stuff from my folio. I mean, these days I'm pretty much a fine art photographer. That's all I do. I don't work for anybody. Make pictures for myself. So I was born in 1946 from a working class family. I was a very undistinguished student. In fact, I was a high school dropout, which is kind of interesting because I went on to be a university lecturer. Seems most things I've done have a finite time period, and it seems to be about a decade to 10 to 12 years, where I last at whatever task is in hand, and then get tired of it and move on. And I'm not afraid to burn bridges, so I've burned quite a few bridges in my lifetime. I travel extensively. When I was in my 20s, 21, I sort of left Australia. And I traveled extensively over a period of 8 years, and did a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, sort of as a, in terms of employment. So, I was a flat cleaner, and I was a delivery van driver, flat cleaner. Like I say, I worked on the oil rigs in the North Sea. I've been a production welder, a farmer. Was a roadie for a pub band in Ireland for a year. And I did all these, market gardener. A market gardener is a person who grows vegetables. Basically, I had an acre of 1 acre plot where I grew vegetables and sold them to friends and friends of friends. It wasn't particularly successful. I guess something else that is important, that I'm not particularly interested in money. So that probably makes me a bit of a heretic. So I'm not that interested in the accumulation of wealth. I've never really found it necessary. I have a pretty good right. My life is not perfect, but I mean it's pretty comfortable. And if it's comfortable doing what I'm doing, so I don't really see the point in trying to accumulate more wealth. So I discovered photography in 1978. I was living in Tasmania on the side of a mountain in a log cabin with no electricity and no running water, just me and my dog. And my nearest neighbours who lived down the bottom of the mountain were doing a hobby course in photography. And I went down one night and they were making some prints in their blacked out bedroom. And I watched the print come up in the developer. And from the looks of the audience tonight, I'd say most of you sort of came from that, or have experienced that era of the wet darkroom. And thought this is really interesting. So 78, that would have made me, I don't know, 32. And so I traveled the world for 6 years, over a period of 8 years, without a camera. But I spent a lot of time looking at stuff and And I think that's probably the most valuable thing, the most valuable schooling we can get as photographers is to look and see. I moved back to mainland in 1979. I ended up managing a beef farm on the southwest coast of Victoria. And I bought myself an SLR and taught myself photography from the, and I did that through the photography magazines of the day. In 1983, we had major bushfires, the first major bushfires. So it seems they've become almost an annual occurrence nowadays. But in '83, it was the first big one since back in the 40s, I think, or maybe even the 20s. And anyhow, the bushfire came along and burnt everything down. So it burnt my house, and I think I got out of that fire with my camera case, my dog, my car, and the clothes I was wearing. So I got some money out of I had a bushfire appeal fund from which I ended up with $12,000, which wasn't enough to do anything else. So I thought, oh, I'll see if I can invest this money in learning to do this photography thing properly. So I rang up my parents and I said, is my old room at home still available? And it was. So I moved back in and I applied for a few photography courses in Melbourne. And I got accepted into RMIT, which in those days was the course for commercial photography. It had an international reputation, and so I got on that. And it's really interesting. I remember going to an information day before I applied. And there was a lecture theatre full of young hopefuls wanting to get in the course. It was normally there would be 1,000 applicants for 30 places. That was the status of that course. And I remember the head lecturer sort of got up in front of the audience and said, and when you come out of your RMIT course with your degree in photography, you will be earning $1,000 a day. And it was interesting. I looked around and I see all these young heads. I mean, sort of doing the maths, $1,000 a day. You know, whoa, that's like conservatively, I'm going to be making $250K a year. And I looked at it from the other point of view. I said, wow, $1,000 a day. It means I'm only going to have to work maybe 10 days in a year to earn more than I'm earning now. So anyhow. So I got accepted into that course. I graduated in '87, so I was age 41. Went straight into a commercial photography student with a couple of other graduates, and started my career as an advertising photographer. So I was shooting mainly advertising, especially still life, and corporate stuff. And I got to say, I've always had a disdain for the advertising industry, and the longer I was involved, I mean, sort of the more that disdain became apparent that I wasn't really cut out to be an advertising photographer. I was probably no better as a photographer than 100 other photographers in Melbourne at that time. But what I didn't like was the advertising people. And generally, I saw those who were most successful, I found, were those who talked the talk, walked the walk, lived the life. You know, I didn't do any of those things. But anyhow, I persisted with that for 15 years, I think, before I finally burned the bridge. But concurrent with that, I also started teaching. I taught photography sessionally because when I was a student, I sort of at RMIT, being so much older than most of my peers who were all in their maybe 20s, maybe early 30s, and here was me in my 40s. And occasionally I would get asked to, if any of the lecturers had meetings or stuff they had to go to, sometimes I was asked to take their classes, their first year tutorials of photography, which I did. So I had a bit of a reputation, and I started teaching sessionally on sort of at the same time that I was trying to shoot commercially and establish a client base. Age 50, I mean, I'm not enjoying being an advertising photographer. I think most of the stuff that I photographed, I saw as being of little or nil value to humanity, and I never understand the obsession with advertising people and their obsession with perfection. So I guess that's another thing that doesn't hold me back. I mean, I don't have an obsession with perfection. So anyhow, age 50, I decided I need to, at that stage, I was renting a studio, which I lived in, and I figured I was getting a bit long in the tooth, not enjoying what I was doing. It was time to find somewhere to lay down some roots and somewhere to go away and die. And I found this block of land in Lionville. Let me just go with this. Boom. So there we are. This is my house. I mean, it doesn't often snow. Generally, we get snow every winter, but it doesn't stay around for long. So this was back in 2007, I think. When it stuck around for 3 or 4 days. It's an aerial view. I don't know if anybody there knows Jamie Stillings from Santa Fe, a photographer who was out here for a festival and came and visited. I'd met Jamie at a festival in China, and he came out and brought his drone and did some aerial footage of my place. So this is my land. It's just under 2 acres, and it backs on to down the bottom is the Wombat State Forest. So over my back fence is the Wombat State Forest, which is 66,000 hectares, which I don't have to look after. It's good. I also have kangaroos and wallabies and echidnas and the occasional koala, lots of birds, lots of native wildlife. This is my house. Since I've become a fine art photographer, which is all I do now, I sort of take pieces for myself. Occasionally I'll open up the studio, I put a sandwich board up on the highways, and so open studio. So I think I have probably around about 100 framed pictures on display. My office is separated from the house by a little formal Japanese garden. That's my office from where I'm speaking today. It's where it all happens.
Jeff, where does all your
This
framing?
is it. Sorry?
Where does all your framing get processed?
In this building here. Okay, so I frame, I print myself. I do everything myself. So I'm a big believer in self-help. So this is a shed that grew. It started out just a lean-to when I was building the house, and and I added a couple extra bays, and then I added a carport on the back, and then I added 2 rooms on top. So this is upstairs. So this is where that's where I print and frame. Downstairs is a bit of a just a studio space. It's not huge, but it's big enough for what I do. So building a house, I started off, I made a cardboard model. So it's pretty much basically the shape, like just the configuration is slightly different inside. But I made a model. This is what I planned on it looking like. And I drew up some plans. I'm not a draftsman, but I look at a few books on and look at a few other people's plans and think, okay, I can do that. And I submitted those, not expecting them to be accepted. I expected, I saw the response from council say, well, yeah, well, that's going to be nice. Go away and get an architectural draftsman to draw your plans. But came back with just a few little things that you want to change and stamp of approval. So I went ahead and built the house. I have a collection of guitars. I think, and when it comes to, I think, had I more musical talent, I wouldn't be a photographer. I'd probably be a musician. But I see myself as a bit like the photographer. I mean, sort of the amateur photographer who's not very good, thinks if just I had a better camera, so he goes and buys a better camera and then a medium format camera and but never gets any better as a photographer. So I accumulate guitars. I'm also a keen gardener, so this is my vegetable garden. So this is a couple of seasons ago, but I have I think 26 beds of those about that size, 8 foot by 4 foot. Got 30 grapevines, sort of which produce wine grapes. Never enough to really make a decent bottling or vintage. But anyhow. Okay. So yes, if you have any questions, kind of ask as we go along.
Yes, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, it's like, I'm kind of curious, like what's guiding you in your life right now?
Okay, a sense of curiosity, I guess. I kind of like, I think the accumulation of knowledge is a really valuable thing as long as you don't get obsessed by it. And so, it's kind of like, I only take it to the basis of it needs to know. And I think it's also, I try to be true to myself, without being perfect or without without being driven by anything major or significant. I kind of like do stuff. I said I'm retired, so I get the age pension, which is not a lot of money, but because I built the house myself and I don't owe anybody, not encumbered with kids or ex-wives, so I have no alimony to pay or college fees. So I'm pretty much self-sufficient, which suits me. I don't know if that answers the question.
Jeff, I have a question. I have a question for you, Jeff. Did you move to Lionville before Ballarat started?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Well,
And
let
did
me
you-
first. Yeah, shoot.
So I was just going to say, were you one of the founders of Ballarat?
I am the founder. It's
Oh,
my
okay.
stupid idea.
I was
Okay.
kind of surprised that it's so far from Melbourne because it's, kind of out in the country.
Well, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, I'll get to the story. So after this, so I think we go on the BIFB. This is a project I said when I was a teacher. I taught graphic design students at RMIT for 12 years. And teaching is another bridge that I've burned. But at that stage, because I don't know if any of you have experience as teachers. But if you're a teacher and you have a dud bunch, I mean, it's a terrible occupation, I think. But if you get a good bunch, I mean, so it's fantastic. And this year, I mean, which was 2000 and whenever, 2012 maybe, had a really good bunch of first year graphic design students who I was trying to teach photography. And at the end of the year, I decided I would do a project. I sort of offered to do a portrait of each of them, from which this came out. So, sorry, there we go. 2002. Oh, yeah. At the end of the semester, I offered to make a series of portraits of those interested from class of 40, around 30 filled in a roster to turn up my studio to be photographed. I shot a roll on each with a medium format film holder on a 5.4 camera, from which I chose one frame for a hero shot. This was shown along with the proof sheet in the resultant exhibition. And previously, I mean, so I'd seen this exhibition by Bettina Reims, a German photographer. I don't know if anybody knows her work. They were her androgynous portraits, big black and white prints, sort of spaced around the gallery, and sort of had a really strong impact. I mean, sort of as very similar. And they're all probably like sort of mid-length portraits, all very much the same lighting. And so that's what I had in mind when I started this. So I shot a roll of black and white 120 on each, and then from that I chose a frame and did a variety of different prints on. So there were some big silver prints, there were some digital prints. Interesting. I remember I entered the hero shot in a professional awards for the AIPP back in the day, and it scored very poorly. And I was just thinking why it scored poorly is because there was no backstory. I mean, sort of in our print judging, so there's a print comes around on a turntable, and you've got a panel of 5 judges sitting there with their binoculars. And so they know nothing about the print. It comes around in random order without any explanation, and they give it a numerical score. This girl, she was from Indonesia. Her name was Olivia. But when she'd filled in her application form to go to RMIT, somehow it ended up her name as first name and surname as Livia. So it was Livia. So when she came to do her portrait, obviously Livia needed to be a dual portrait, so they're all double exposures in camera. And then I took it further when I made the hero print and tried to give it a stereo appearance, and introduced a kind of like a 3D, something that needed to be viewed through 3D glasses. And perhaps if I had have been able to stand there with my photograph and tell the judges what it meant, or why I did it, it may have scored a lot higher than it did. He's Japanese, obviously. I'm going to close out of that. And before we go to that, and we can come back to that. Okay, the festival. Okay, the Ballarat National Photo Biennale started out in 2005 as the Daylesford Photo Biennale. Now, Daylesford is just 15 clicks up the road from Lineville. And Daylesford is a little tourist town. Daylesford is the spa capital of Victoria, so lots of mineral water. And it established as a holiday destination back in the 1920s, I guess. So there were guest houses where people would come to Daylesford and take the waters. Small population, maybe 7,500, and but it's still seen as a tourist destination. Had a fairly strong, so the mix of people are artists, ferals, hippies, tree changers, and farmers. So it's a fairly diverse population, but quite a strong artist group. So there's a former convent called, which is converted into an art space, the Convent Gallery. A few commercial spaces, and some old halls and churches and stuff. And at that stage, I read a bit about Arles, how Arles was this ancient town. I sort of had all these spaces, historic spaces with preservation orders slapped on them that couldn't be done anything with. And Lucien Clerc formed the festival there back in the 80s, I think it was, using these spaces as gallery venues. So I thought, well, we could do that in Daylesford. So we went ahead. I formed a small committee. Back in my days, as when I was a member of the AIPP and as a teacher, I'd started a competition for photography students called the Victorian Photography Student of the Year Awards, which I'd run for, I don't know, 10 years, I think. And through that process, I'd made a lot of industry contacts, trying to find sponsorship and prizes and whatever. So I'd had industry contacts, the suppliers, the manufacturers, Kodak, Fuji, etc. And so once I decided, okay, so we've got we've formed a small committee. Went and spoke to a couple of art groups about the idea, and they were fantastic. I went and saw the mayor. He said, "It's a fantastic idea, Jeff. I think I'm way ahead of you." And so with that, okay, let's do it. So we established the first festival in 2005 on not a lot of money. So it's a Daylesford Photo Biennale. So it was structured on the model of those big international festivals, month-long, multi-venue, multi-event. If we go back. So there we are, 37 exhibitions, 7 days of seminars, 26 speakers, 7 workshops, a book fair, photography flea market, plus more. And it was relatively successful. So that's the main street of Dalesford. So about the middle third of the picture is the main street. It's only probably what, 200 meters. So it's kind of a pretty small place. This is the opening of the launch of the festival at the Convent Gallery, and the guy on with the scissors is Brian Dora, an Australian comedian. The guy with the sticks is Wolfgang Sievers, probably no longer with us, but one of Australia's better industrial photographers, the mayor and myself. And it's interesting, so at the close of the festival, I spoke with the owner of the Convent Gallery, Tina Benetsky, and I said, Tina, how many people do you reckon you had through over the month? And she said 15,000. And I thought, okay, so if Tina had 15,000 people through the convent, there's probably another 5,000 somewhere that went other spaces at least. So we can say we brought 20,000 people to Dalesford, to the festival, which was wildly overestimated, and so which came back to haunt us for 4 or 5 festivals, I think, after that. Perhaps the numbers that we brought to Dalesford were probably more like 3,000 or 4,000, but still, for a little town like that, I mean, so it was good. So, with the heady success of that, we moved on to 2007, Dalesford Photo Biennale in 2007. It was our second international festival of photography. And we'd expanded, I mean, sort of from Dalesford. We'd also included a lot of the other smaller villages and towns in the Shire. So I spent a whole month driving around the Shire at breakneck speed, trying to put out bushfires from places to place. So at that stage, we changed I developed the structure into, we had a main program and we had an umbrella program. So we had 19 exhibitions in the main program, 70 umbrella shows, 21 workshops, 7 seminars, 10 affiliate events, projections program, etc., etc. We had 3 international guests, or 4 international guests, I think, exhibitions. 3 of whom actually came to the festival. Flavia Solner from Norway, Eduardo Hill from Argentina, and Masaki Hirano from Japan. This was at Anderson's Mill. It's a camera obscura. Anderson's Mill is an old flour mill, no longer used. I sort of from the late 19th century, I think, in a place called Smeaton. Basically, there's nothing else there. And of course, the festival is in June, July, which is the middle of winter in Australia, freezing cold, and sort of. But a fantastic space nonetheless. So this is Masaki Hirano's work called Stumps of Silence. This was the Dalesford Town Hall, for which, I mean, so the Shire's the council's contribution was to give us a discount on the hire of the town hall. That's about as much as they put into the festival. It's the Smeaton Hall, not the Smeaton Hall, the Glen Lyon Hall. Glen Lyon is probably a population of 1,200 maybe. Clunes Town Hall, Clunes is probably a population, maybe 3,500, 4,000 maybe. It's Eduardo Gil from Argentina, his show in Clunes. This is my work. I was part of the umbrella show at, or the Fringe at Anderson's Mill. Let's go back one. Okay. Now, I guess one of the drawbacks of trying to run a festival like that, successful though it was, I mean, sort of in a small town, is trying to find exhibition spaces. And of course, anything that's halfway suitable, that's a decent size, every group in the community has a call on it. There's a ladies group or a seniors group that wanted for 1 day a week or 2 days a week, and so trying to find spaces, I mean, so that we could use for a whole month was problematic. I remember there was a church hall, which we had, and at that stage, I mean, sort of we only opened the main venues Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The church hall was fine. Yes, they gave us the use of that. We set up the show, but then they told us, oh, we have a children's circus group comes in on Mondays, and they put up tumbling mats and everything, so you'll have to take the exhibition down while they put up the mats and then hang it again. So over 4 weeks, every week, we had to take the exhibition down, rehang it again. It was an absolute pain. Also, it's kind of difficult, I mean, sort of to run an organisation on volunteers. Volunteers, I mean, sort of fine, an invaluable resource, but and not necessarily that committed. I sort of have other issues, I mean, sort of that dominate their lives, and quite often, I mean, sort of think other things would take preference. So anyhow, we decided that, I decided that I didn't want to do it anymore. It was just too hard. And my suggestion was to the committee. And the committee was a mistake I used. I changed the name of the committee to the board, which gave a real change in attitude. I decided, I mean, so that 2009 was just a road too hard to hoe, and suggested that we fold the organisation. And then we got an offer from Ballarat, which Ballarat is half an hour, 35 minutes from Dalesford along the highway. And Ballarat is a city with a population of 100,000. And it's on the main highway between Adelaide and Melbourne. It's 100 clicks, I think, or 120 clicks from Melbourne, so not that far. And obviously, a much bigger city has far more resources in terms of volunteers, potential spaces. The council had a meeting and said, what would it take to bring the festival to Ballarat? They heard that I saw that we weren't happy with Dalesford. So they gave us seed funding, I think 40K in seed funding. They gave us offices and guaranteed the use of 5 historical spaces to use as exhibition spaces. And after the support that we'd got from Dalesford, it was a no-brainer. So we moved to Ballarat. And so that was our first festival in 2009. And we changed the date almost sort of a little bit later in the year. I sort of say that's early spring, September to October, or mid-spring. But Ballarat has the reputation of being the coldest city in the state of Victoria. It lives up to its reputation. So this is the mining exchange. Upstairs we had our offices, a beautiful old space. We're given that for a month. We invested money in infrastructure, so we built those display boards. and that was the opening of the festival. This is a room off the side of the money exchange, which we dubbed the naughty room. And so we decided we could put any edgy exhibitions into the naughty room, and we could sign it that, you know, caution all who enter there. This was upstairs at the town hall, another beautiful old space, which was slightly problematical with access. We hadn't got around to painting the display boards at that stage, and obviously had no lighting or anything. But anyhow, this is Lawrence Simonuti, from the late Lawrence Simonuti. I don't know if anybody knows of Lawrence. She was from Baltimore. Does this lovely, or did this lovely introspective work, mainly self-portraiture. She killed herself a couple of years later after this. And one of these days I would love to do a book of her work as a memorial. Tim Griffith, Australian photographer who works mainly in the States. I think he's based in LA, one of the world's better industrial photographers. This is the Art Gallery Ballarat. So we had a pretty strong lineup. And I guess, you know, we kind of felt that we'd established, I don't know what the figures were. Our figures, once again, because we promoted, I mean, so that we brought 20,000 people to Dalesford. I mean, so we had to fudge the figures to Ballarat that sort of we couldn't go down on the number of people that we said we attracted, so we had to raise that. 2011, bigger and better. Once again, the mining exchange. You can see now we have lighting, which I designed, so that we made ourselves. We had more infrastructure. Everything was painted. James Nakagawa from, I think James from Indiana, came to the festival with his show. It's one of our fringe venues. From the second festival in Dalesford, we produced a catalogue. This is the core program catalogue. So we did one for 2009, this is 2011. And we also did another publication. I think this was sponsored by Blurb, who gave us a whole bunch of, I think they gave us 50 copies of this book. It's a bit of a grab bag of stuff. Judith Crispin, an Australian photographer who does really interesting work, has become a very firm friend over the years. One of my favourite photographers, Jan Soudek, an early influence from my student days. Jan didn't come to the festival because he's a bit of a recluse, but Sarah did. Sarah was Soudek's muse, sorry. Not his wife or girlfriend. In fact, Sarah is married to Soudek's son. Is or was, I don't know. But they had this show, which went in the naughty room. This was one of the Soudek images that I chose for a poster and also for an advertising campaign. And we ran it as an ad in a publication called Art Almanac. And somebody complained. I mean, saw it as a woman offering her daughter for prostitution, which is not how I saw it. Anyhow, so I got a call from this woman, who sees herself as the protector of the youth of Australia. Yada, yada, yada. Anyhow, the story went on. And because I had a whole range of Soudex stuff to choose from for the exhibition, that I decided not to use this picture in the actual show, because this woman had also, after she got no joy from me, sort of went to our funders, Tourism Victoria and the council. What are you doing showing this sort of rubbish and da-da? So I decided not to include it. And of course, then I got heaps of hate mail for, succumbing to censorship. But I saw it as, sort of had our funding sources being cut off, and so there would be no festival. So discretion is the better part of valor. This is 15, which is my last festival as festival director. And unfortunately, I don't have anything. I sort of searched through all my files, my systems. I don't have any stuff. And it's because in 15, we took on a festival manager. And so I was left to look after the artistic side of the festival. Kind of like I was shifted sideways. And in the end, I just had enough. The festival got bigger and better and grew its reputation, but it just got harder and harder to do, harder to raise the funding. We had to deal with compliance and paperwork and meetings and incessant meetings, and dealing with people, especially on the administrative side, who could have made our lives so much easier, but chose not to. So in the end, I decided I had enough. I'm out. So I resigned as festival director after 2015. Actually, I sort of hang on until 2016 until they could find a replacement for me. So hang on, it's back from. Sorry, these are pictures from 2011. So I got confused there. But as you can see, we had some wonderful venues. Our core program, they're all historic spaces. They're problematical in as much as, so they weren't gallery spaces, or most of them weren't gallery spaces. So we had to turn them into gallery spaces. So it was, acquiring the infrastructure, lighting, became a bit of an epic. Young Ho Kang from South Korea, known as the dancing photographer. Russell Joslin, who used to publish Shots magazine. I don't know if any of you come across Shots or Russell. He came to the festival. Okay, that's 2015, for which I have nothing. From that. Any questions?
Jeff, this is Walt. I'm curious, probably speaking for myself more than anything, but, Australia is a place that I usually think that anything that can eat you or kill you lives in Australia, as opposed to living in the Pacific Northwest, which is fairly safe most times. How would you, we share a language, almost the same language. We share photography around the world. I'm curious about what you'd say about the differences between the northern and southern hemispheres. And I think a lot of us relate to photolucida, and you're familiar with that. So could you just contrast, maybe the Australian centric or Southern Hemisphere centric versus Northern photography practices and culture?
I think the Australian, there's not a whole lot of difference. Given I mean, sort of, I know in the Ballarat, the festival, I sort of was my spin on photography, and so it was about, I mean, showing the diversity of the genre, and hence, I mean, sort of my program was always 20 main exhibitions, 20 to 25 main exhibitions. Half were Australian, half were international. There was always a representation of all the genres: fine art, scientific, photo documentary, landscape, commercial. So I always tried to put together a program I saw that was based on that. And pretty much I was the curator. So it was my call to invite and set up the style of the festival, which I think in a lot of the international festivals has become the domain of the curator. And so I approached this as, you know, from my background as a commercial photographer, as a teacher, and I guess I've always been a fan of photography and a student of photography as well as being a photographer. And so a lot of the festivals now, as I say, are being taken over by, are seen with a curator's eye. And in fact, that's what Ballarat has become. I mean, sort of the new director, I mean, sort of has got rid of all our resources. I mean, sort of she needs anything, I mean, sort of she hires it. She engages independent curators to curate the various venues. And most curators are academics or administrators and not photographers. And they're good at writing essays and intellectualizing processes. Whereas me, I saw there was less of the intellectual, more of the straight-ahead visual. Does it look good? You know? And so a lot of those festivals, and the ones that I've been to, so I've been to Photo Fest and I've been to Perry Photo, so it's not really a festival, it's more like a trade show. But I've been to a lot of festivals in China. But the ones that I know, I've been to Toronto, to Contact in Toronto, which I think, I mean, sort of has a strong curatorial element to it. Okay. And I find it far less interesting and more aimed at the intellectual than the photography loving public, shall we say. And somebody raised earlier about Ballarat being so far from Melbourne. I guess one of the beauties of Ballarat was that it's a fairly substantial sized city, 100,000, 120,000, I think. But our venues were all within 5 minutes walk of each other. And we developed pretty good signage early on. So it was kind of easy, to work your way around the festival and see everything. Whereas so many of those, Toronto was a pain. Photo Fest was a pain. Trying to find various venues, to circulate around and see all the work. Head On in Sydney is the same. There's a festival line which was supposed to start this year in Melbourne called Photo 2020, which has been postponed, is now Photo 2021. But it's going to be spread out, curatorial based. So the beauty for me of Ballarat was everything was so close and so compact and easy to see. And those Chinese festivals that I've attended, I've been to Pingyao 4 or 5 times. And Pingyao, everything is in two factory spaces. So compact. I mean, so and that's the beauty. So for me, the drawback of a festival where you spend all your time trying to read a map, negotiate, find venues. I mean, so is a huge drawback. So,
where would you put Photolucida on that? Would you call it more curatorial based or grassroots?
well, see, I don't really see Lucida as a photo festival. It's a portfolio review. I mean, so it seems that the reviews are the festival. I mean, so and there's a few shows that hang off the side of it, but not many. In fact, I was surprised. I mean, so I was expecting, I mean, sort of to spend all my time when I wasn't reviewing. So over 3 or 4 days, going around to all the various venues and seeing shows. And I was surprised that there weren't that many. So, given I saw that you know, I was expecting something. You know, for instance, the last Ballarat, I think we had 120 shows in the Fringe. You know, so these are shows in cafes and restaurants and wherever. I think in the last Ballarat that I did was 220 events, I think. So, anyhow, it's good fun, and I think, you know, sort of if you're a photographer, so it seems to be that most photographers that I have contact with in the US, I mean, sort of submit work to these group shows. What do they call them? So the single images. For me, as a photographer, so I shoot bodies of work. That's my aim, is to shoot, and I shoot with the aim of sort of having an exhibition, hanging prints on a wall, which is my favourite way of showing my work. And I think I've had something like 50, 51, 52 solo shows to date. I mean, usually they're not very big and usually they're not very successful, but because I print and frame myself and do everything myself and hang them myself, it's not a huge issue.
Carol, did you have a question you wanted to ask Jeff?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Carol Isaac.
Yes. Well, since you come to this event via my suggestion, I feel very responsible for what you have presented.
Yeah.
No, I'm very serious. I told Susan about you. I told Walt about you. You had been a guest in my house, and there is a photograph of yours hanging in my living room. So we as a group, none of us are festival administrators. Very few of us are festival attendees. Why you were invited was to show your work. And I'm still waiting for you to show your work and explain the method of your work, because no one among us does what you do. And that's really important to me.
Asking and your wish shall be answered. Says this is a folio work, my personal work. Okay. This first work is
exactly what we expected, and that's exactly what I expected.
okay. Well, there you go.
We've never had a problem with Carol being direct when she speaks on the board.
Yay!
This work is called Looney Bin. The subjects who appear in these photographs are in the main photographers. They're all members of an anarchic photographic group called the Free Radicals. It's a group I started back in, I don't know, 2008 or 5, which Anyhow, these images result from a self-assigned project at a photographic retreat undertaken by the Free Radicals in 2005 at the former mental asylum, long since decommissioned, at Beechworth in northeastern Victoria. My thanks to my fellow Free Radicals for agreeing to be part of this project, and my appreciation to them for their ability to slip so easily into character. Special thanks to Gordon Williams for retrieving 3 lost rolls of film from the rubbish bin at the Looney Bin, without which this project would be somewhat incomplete. Thanks also to my schizophrenic cousin, Julian Mann, for our long meandering conversations over recent years, which have acted as a point of reference for me on the subject of mental illness. Who amongst us is really sane? So we went away for a weekend to this retreat. And I took a lot, and so we made our own personal projects, and we talked about photography, and we watched a few films and videos about photography. And I took along this pair of glasses, thick bottle lens glasses that I got from a joke shop. And I decided I was going to do a picture of my fellow photographers as mentally insane. I mean, it does sound a fairly cruel premise for an exhibition. So, but anyhow, so Suzette hasn't got a husband yet. Jarek is Polish. He comes from Poland. He is happy when he is with the other Poles. Christiana is going to be on the telly when she gets better. So so they're all wearing the glasses, and I asked them to look silly. So I got Christiana to button up her cardigan, but in the incorrect buttonholes. Rick is very sick, so is Teddy. They both refuse to take their medication. In fact, some years later, Rick he actually committed suicide, jumped in front of a train. It's a very sad thing. It's an excellent commercial photographer. Gordon Pickard. Gordon Pickard was a lecturer at RMIT. And Gordon Pickard in the art, I think his life is very hard. And this is how the text came about. I mean, so the text I didn't start with the text. So as I was doing a bit of processing on the computer of this picture, Gordon Pickard, I'm saying Gordon Pickard in the yard. Gordon Pickard in the yard. I think his life is very hard. I mean, that's a good idea. I could do a little rhyme for each of them. And so then I went back to the start and came up with the text, which I wrote with my left hand. I said, obviously I'm right-handed. And Kennedy can read between the lines. It's one flew over the cuckoo's nest, upside down. An old T-shirt of mine. Chris has lots of friends that I've never met. I do whatever the voices in my head tell me. Darren has a pellet inside his head to control him. Sometimes it hurts. The idea for this came directly from my schizophrenic cousin. Who told me that's what happens. He said, Jeff, you ever go into hospital, don't ever let them put you out, because they'll plant a pellet in your head and they'll use it to control you. Jackie Robinson got some binoculars for her birthday. She likes to look at things. Go away, John. Christopher Jones can run very fast. He also understands algebra. So that was Looney Bin. And it is a series of little handmade books. Looney Bin was one of them. So it was, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. Moving right along. Souvenir spoons. When my mother passed away in 1991, I inherited a collection of souvenir spoons accumulated over decades from lawn bowling clubs throughout Australia. They lay long forgotten in a cardboard shoebox for some years in my back shed. And while searching for something else, I rediscovered them by chance. In the intervening years, they'd become badly tarnished and taken on the most exquisite patina. The images were shot medium format on Fuji Velvia and in a somewhat perverse course of events, I decided the images looked too clean and pretty on fine grain transparency. So I added the grain digitally before I made the prints. Souvenir spoons.
Pretty colors.
Adventures of the Red Shoe Tourist. This is a kind of ongoing project. This ongoing body of work references the joiner photographic technique used by David Hockney back in the 1970s, reconstructing a scene from multiple images made from a singular viewpoint. There was a period when Hockney went from gridded Polaroids to a more random arrangement of 6x4 prints, which quite often included his feet. The series began in 2009 when I was assisting large format photographer Richard White at a workshop along the famous Great Ocean Road. It was the third year in a row that we had visited this grove of redwoods, and I was looking to encourage the group of workshoppers to explore seeing things in a less conventional way. Like Hockney's joiners, these are low-tech, made with a consumer-level digital point-and-shoot camera and stitched together with Canon's consumer software photo stitch, remaining true to the maxim, it's not what sort of camera you've got, but what you pointed at. I've continued to document my travels as I go, ruining the days when a potential scene appears before me and I'm not wearing a pair of red shoes. I do have quite a few pair. So this was the first red shoe tourist picture. Actually has a fountain, a picture of that exact same fountain. Parry photo. In fact, the only time I wasn't wearing a pair of red shoes, so the shoes are coloured digitally. Turn me off, turn me on. These free-flowing images of derelict electrical components were photographed on a 5x4 at the former Federal Woolen Mills in Geelong, Victoria. We've been given access to the derelict industrial space to stage a community photography show under the auspices of the Galeria Beige Domna, the Homeless Gallery, an egalitarian Polish concept for staging photography exhibitions in interesting spaces and at no cost and without rules for participating artists. Quite often I'll do things like this. Is okay if you look closely. I mean, sort of the switch on the left has both off and off, and the one on the right has on and on. Obviously done on computer, but it's kind of not something that you would look at unless you spent time at it and
You were looking closely, Jeff.
You know, I mean, for me, that's, I mean, sort of, I think, is how we develop our skills as photographers is by looking. It's not just by looking; it's by looking and analysis. Right? So it's one thing I sort of look at a picture and say, I like that, or I don't like that. Light switch, heavy switch. I mean, it's easy to look at something and say, I like that or I don't like that. I mean, sure. For me, I mean, the secret is to look at something and say, I like it. Why do I like it? You know, and it's once you start analysing sort of why you like something, and, sort of, and it could be 1,000 different reasons why you like it, or it could be why you dislike it. You know, and once you build up that store in your brain, which mine operates mainly on the right hemisphere, you can use those things. You bring those things to your own photographs. You know. So you introduce those elements, those things that you like to your own pictures, and you avoid those things that you've looked in other people's pictures and disliked, so you don't include them in your work. Requiem for a Love Lost. This series has gone through a few transitions in its title. This work started out as La Salle de Bain de Christina X. La Salle de Bain is the bathroom. The images of tiny mosaic tiles, approximately 2 centimetres square, that adorn the walls of the bathroom of my then lover, Christina X. X's Paris apartment, hence the title on each image. En masse, they look quite kitsch and very much a throwback to an 80s design aesthetic. But in isolation, each was actually unique and quite a work of art in itself. So that was the secret. I saw all these hundreds and hundreds of tiles, I saw they're all different and all quite beautiful. Superimposed on each tile is a sandwich portrait of the lady in question, who was most displeased that I'd included a name when I first showed her the work. I'm a very private person, she emphatically stated. I explained that the portrait was so abstract and the surname X so patently anonymous, and the fact that there is no indication as to the location of her apartment, that in fact her protestations were quite ridiculous. She threatened to end our relationship, so in the cause of true love, I changed the name of the work to Tango in Paris. Inevitably, she dumped me anyhow, so I settled on the final title for the work, Requiem for a Love Lost. That's me and Christina X. Who actually, I sort of is an Australian girl. She's from Sydney, but I sort of also has a property in Melbourne. And when her last visit here, and sort of we did a series of portraits. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, sort of that. So we did all these portraits in the studio. Must have been about 40 or 50, and these 3 frames appeared in successive frames. I mean, so, it's quite out to be printed as a triptych. Die Großen Schmerz, the big kiss. That was her apartment in Paris. There's the bathroom, and we can just see those little tiles on the right-hand side of the picture. Well, that's one, probably the portrait is most obvious, but each one has a face in there. And those portraits weren't, so just snapshots that I had of her that I'd made over a period of time. Okay. So I'm gonna escape from that. I'm gonna delete that. I was going to talk about beta. I might come back to beta if we have time. Seeing as Carol wants to see pictures. Now, I've always been interested as an exhibiting photographer. And so I have pictures on the wall. And I really never had the desire to be published, to have a book, even though I've made a few little handmade books over the years. and a few photographers who had seen this work. And so this is work, although I've made it over a period of time, is work that's made on a flatbed scanner. So it's cameraless. So I've done away with the camera, cut out the middleman, I like to say. And I decided to put this work together in a book, in book form. The book is called Scan, obviously. Oh, okay, let me go back. So that's my flatbed scanner. I saw, and I also have a black velvet lined box that I put over the bed. So I just laid the objects on the flatbed scanner and hit the button. Boom, put the box over the top. I love the quality of the light. So I like the limited depth of field. I like the quality of the nature of the light. It gives the subjects given, so that you're not trying to photograph something shiny. But let me get out of this. Escape. Somebody wants to ask a question.
If you want to ask a question, press your space bar to demute your computer.
I just got to do that. Okay, so there's a PDF. So let me just go to view, page display, 2-page view. And let's move it down to okay. Can we all see that? This is the intro by Judith Crispin. Says lots of flattering things about me. And basically, there's 10 different bodies of work. So these were done as separate exhibitions and have hung as separate exhibitions. And when I was talking to a fellow photographer about doing a book, he said, well, why don't you do each body of work as a chapter? And so that's how the concept came about. So the first one is Bountiful Harvest. And don't let those large format film rebates fool you. And so they're all made on a flatbed scanner. And so the film rebates were added post. Chapter 2, the elephant stamp. And I'll just read you the text. I was never an exemplary student, and I don't ever remember getting an elephant stamp during my school years. At age 66, I decided it was time to redress the balance. Using a flatbed scanner, these images are contemporary visitation of the antique photograms made in a wet, dark room. Obviously, I made the prints before I came up with the idea for the elephant stamp. And so the elephant stamp was, well, the concept sort of came post making of the photographs. And the elephant stamp was something to tie it together, and a design element. Just add a little bit of color.
Jeff, is there any significance to the elephant stamp itself?
No, it's just a stamp that I found online. I don't know if any of you, at school, if if you got a star, if you did good work, or it was a stamp. I mean, sort of recognition. I mean, sort of you done good from your teacher. And I seem to recall, I mean, so one of our teachers had elephant stamps, and you got an elephant stamp if you did good work. So that's why I did it. It's called 20 Carat Love.
Jeff, I have a question
Yes?
for you. Yeah, my
Pat?
name's Pat. This is Pat. So I'm doing a fair amount of flatbed scanning work myself these days. Your work is beautiful here.
Thank you.
So I know the process. I tend to work in a very dark room and just leave the lid open and scan to get the black, whereas it seems like you use your velvet lined box. But nevertheless, I dare say you encountered the same problem I do, and that is the nuisance of dust and pollen that has to be removed if you want that pure black background that you're getting here. So how do you get rid of all the artifacts of all the dust that flies around the room and the pollen that jumps off the plant and all the other flotsam and jetsam?
I spend hours retouching.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
I got to say, so I spend hours retouching dust.
Okay, well, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because so do I. And that's the hardest part of doing a scan is to, you mentioned you're not such a perfectionist, but I am. So I was looking for some shortcuts, but sounds like you don't have any.
Can you see my brush?
Yes, I've got my own too. You probably can't see it, but I've got my horsehair brush here.
Okay. So it's just it comes with the territory.
Yeah. Okay.
But I also, I mean, so this series I did before I had the box, and I have a piece of black crushed velvet, which I would lay over the top of it. Which would give sort of some interesting texture. I sort of say if you see these up close, I mean, so there's texture in the black. It's not black.
Right. Yeah, I think I see a little bit of it.
And so what I've done now is I've photographed just the black, more of the crushed velvet. And so and I will introduce that as a layer in Photoshop.
Okay, so you do transport it over to Photoshop to do your processing there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't do a huge amount. Generally I control contrast, areas of brightness and darkness, and color saturation or desaturation or whatever lends itself. So I'm not I'm always amused by people who show pictures and talk about it and say, well, this picture has 75 layers, and they say, what? 2 layers enough for me to get my head around.
I hear you.
Jeff, we're going to have to start winding down. We're running out of time. So can I ask for questions, any other questions from the group?
I have a question for Jeff actually about festivals. So Jeff, if a person wanted to start researching and learn how to become involved as a photographer in a festival, not as a show person in a festival, what would be 3 things that you would recommend?
Schmooze. Okay, most festivals I sort of have a put out a call for entry, usually for which you have to pay. But it's a bit of a hit and miss thing. I think the best route to go is to do a portfolio review somewhere. Some of the bigger ones, Lucida for one, PhotoFest, or some of the European festivals, ARL. It's a fairly expensive exercise. I would show your work to festival directors. It's how to get known. I mean, sort of how to raise yourself above the pack. You know, if you're, you know, if there's a call for entry and there's 200 photographers on it, sort of put in submissions, it's quite easy. I mean, so if you get overlooked. But I mean, so if you have half an hour with a festival director or 20 minutes with a festival director, and you have a strong body of work, I mean, so you can talk about it, and hopefully, I mean, so it's something that, well, I guess first you need to do your research, find out what they normally show, how the festival works, how they, you know, what they've shown in previous festivals. I don't know. I think with everything, knowledge is king. If you know how a process works, I mean, so then you're better set to deal with it. I mean, I've applied for a lot of festivals, sort of through an open call, paid my money, and got the rejection letter. Thanks for your lovely folio, etc., etc., etc. But not on this occasion. Having gone to many festivals, I mean, sort of, and especially the Chinese festivals, where you get to make contacts, meet friends, you have an opportunity on to schmooze and to sell yourself. So for me, that's the way to go. Have faith in your, you know, in what you're showing. I think that's the way to go. Don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Jeff?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, I just keep flicking through this.
And I have a question for Jeff. Jeff?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Brad, you seem to be you are a person with lots of interests, lots of talents. How do you stay focused on photography, not going off on other tangents?
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm grateful for photography. I mean, so I was a fairly insignificant person, you know. When I was young, I mean, sort of, I wouldn't say boo to anybody. I don't know. I guess photography has given me respect. It's given me a huge amount of friendships, you know, so all around the world. It's something that I do that comes reasonably easy to me. Well, now, I'm a maker of photographs. I'm not a taker of photographs. So if you put me with a camera in a street, I mean, sort of, or at a wedding, I'm useless. You know, I like slow and steady things that don't move. I'm not a good people photographer. I'm not a good spontaneous photographer. So I gravitated on these sort of towards still life interests me. I like shape, I like line, I like form. The other things that drive me. But I also find, I mean, so it gives me a vehicle of I have something to say. I mean, so most of my photographs, I mean, sort of have something to say, or have a deeper meaning than just the superficial to me. Whether other people know that or understand that or is irrelevant. I mean, let's face it. I mean, so we look at a photograph and unless the photographer is standing beside it and telling us what he thinks it means, I mean, so we bring our own stories to it. So I'm quite happy for anybody to bring their own stories to my pictures. And also, I also think there's a degree of bluff and illusion. I mean, so that if you've developed a bit of a reputation, I mean, sort of as a, I think you can get away with a bit. You know, I look through study books of famous photographers, and you know, I love this work, and I think, but that's absolute crap. You know, how did that make it in that book? I mean, so, it's because that person is a famous photographer. Well, he's a famous photographer. That must be good. So.
Can I ask one more question for you, Jeff, about
Sure,
your beautiful
yes.
scan work? I just picked up a book by Carl Blossfeldt. Are you familiar with his
Yes.
work? And
Yes,
your work
he's,
reminds me so much of his. Were you inspired by his early work?
no, I didn't come across Blossfeldt until I think back in the days of. I kind of knew of his work vaguely, but in the background. But I'd never seen any of his books until I was a festival director,
right.
And I was showing somebody some of my work. And most of my work is most of my subject matter comes from my garden. Stuff is derelict or discarded or.
Yeah.
So.
You're lucky to have that. I have a local flower shop who gives me her hand-me-down flowers that she can't use in her arrangements anymore, but and a friend who gives me a few things. But you're so lucky to have a garden. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work of Deb Stoner. She's
No.
a local photographer who specializes in scanned images and particularly botanical. Incredible work, and she brings in her own botanicals from her garden or from other neighbors' gardens, and her work is so detailed. You see the little aphids even from the garden that piggyback on her crop as she brings them in.
Yeah.
You should look her up. She's a Portland person, and I'm sure she'd love, and she's probably familiar with your work, but these are just gorgeous, Jeff. I love these so much.
And her name is?
Deb, D-E-B, Stoner.
Stoner.
S-T-O-N-E-R, like the 60s.
You know, do you know of the work of Kate Brakey?
No, I don't. Oh.
Kate Brakey is an Australian photographer who lives in Arizona. She doesn't scan, but she does hand-colored botanical work. So absolutely beautiful. Look her up.
How do you spell her last name?
B-R-E-A-K-E-Y.
Kate. Okay, I'll look it up. Thanks, Jeff. These are gorgeous, just beautiful. Are you on Instagram? I dare say not.
No,
Yeah,
I waste enough time on. I waste enough time on Facebook. I mean, sort of to. So now for something completely different. So the condoms.
You have a website, however?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
This is a show called Artifacts. So this is obviously this is all scanned. And the last chapter is so these are reference to Western vegetables, all from the garden. Oh, no, I can't escape from that. I need to click that. How are we doing there, Walt?
Well, we're going to have to close, and I just want to thank you for teaching me a lot about the Southern Hemisphere, especially, and just the perspective. Your work is beautiful, and you can see why you match your work. You match your work, and you match so closely the activities that you've undertaken over the years too. So I've enjoyed that. And thank you for doing this for us. It was a lot of fun. I think we all really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, by the way, Jeff, Jeff, so I'm in
Yes.
upstate New York, and in upstate New York, New York's animal is the beaver. So when you were showing your photography with the elephant stamp, if I were able to have a stamp, I would have the beaver. Walt can tell you more
Beaver
about
stamp.
that later.
That is true.
And I want to thank the whole group for allowing me to sit in on this venue tonight. Walt, thank you very, very much. And Jeff, if we ever get to Australia, I'm going to look you up.
Please do. Please do.
Perfect. Thank you.
Nick, you're welcome anytime, both of you, anytime. Our member meetings are open, and for some time we're going to be doing them on Zoom, I'm afraid. So, gang, I think that kind of brings us to the close, and I wanted to say thanks again for all of you guys attending. As I said, I'm not going to read the newsletters to you when we have our members meeting, so you have to read the announcements and things that are going on yourself. Looking forward to seeing you all next month, and we'll have some fun. I'll get a new photo challenge out in a day or two, and we'll see what you come up with for next month. And in the meantime, be safe and healthy. Take care of yourselves, love one another, take pictures, and or don't take pictures, make pictures. And thank you again, Jeff. And to you, I'll say good day, and to the rest of you, I'll say good night.
Thank you.
Night. Bye.
Night.
Thanks, Walt.
Take care.
Happy to come back with the second half of the show if you ever want it.
Glad to do that. We'll schedule. You're gonna have to talk to Susan. She's gonna be scheduling all of our programs. This is
Jeff,
been
we'll probably see in Ray's. We'll probably see in Ray's critique session sometimes too.
Yeah. Oh, there's a good idea.
I enjoyed when we were there.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I'll do that. Okay. Good night, all.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.